Hey there everybody, Sage Popham here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. And I had the opportunity the other day to treat a condition that I had never had an opportunity to treat. And so I thought I would shoot this video here for you, sharing with you the formula that I had used for this person that was incredibly successful, incredibly rapid in its results, but it was for a bit of a slightly embarrassing condition. So for the first time ever, I had an opportunity to treat hemorrhoids. And I know this is something that oftentimes can be a little awkward and uncomfortable for people to discuss, especially for clients. Sometimes it feels a little bit embarrassing and they don't really like to talk about it super openly. And so I thought I would take this time to share with you a holistic approach to treating hemorrhoids, and as well as talk a little bit about more of what the underlying tissue states and pattern and herbal actions and kind of the approach that you want to take towards treating this condition. So really, for me, I actually had no idea how incredibly uncomfortable and painful a hemorrhoid could be. And really, so essentially what a hemorrhoid is the veins in the anal region become engorged with blood and actually protrude from the anus, right? So that's pretty much what my understanding of what a hemorrhoid was. What I didn't realize, which this person helped to illuminate for me, was how incredibly painful and uncomfortable they are. And so this person was primarily complaining of a very intense, hot, burning, irritating pain, pronounced by a lot of itchiness, as well as this sensation of fullness, of like this pressurized pain. This person was actually saying, oh, I almost want to like take a needle and like lance it to drain the blood out to relieve all of the pressure. It was so bad that this person really couldn't sit down without significant discomfort. It was affecting their sleep, and it was overall producing a serious concern for them. And basically they had described that the vein, because they had been looking at it in a mirror, that the vein was approximately this big around. The largest one was this big around, protruding out down there. So what was interesting to note, though, is that I think in general an interesting thing to note is that a conventional approach to treating a hemorrhoid is really topically, right? So the kind of main preparation that we see in over-the-counter medicine that you like get at a drugstore is it's called Preparation H, right? Preparation Hemorrhoid. And it's got a whole bunch of different stuff on it. And I actually did some research on it. And it was interesting that I noticed in the inactive ingredients there was some aloe vera, which I thought was kind of interesting that aloe was considered an inactive ingredient when, of course, we as herbalists know that it is totally active and medicinal. Now, it's also really common for herbalists actually to approach treating a hemorrhoid topically, that instead of Preparation H, they're using more of an herbal salve or cream that is just applied topically throughout the day. But before I share with you the formula that I used for this person, I want to explain a little bit about kind of what leads to a hemorrhoid, like what it is, and how we want to approach holistically treating a hemorrhoid from the inside out, like not just taking a topical approach, but actually correcting the underlying tissue state that gives rise to the hemorrhoid. And so what we see here is that this is a pattern that we might describe as a relaxation tissue state. And basically what the relaxation tissue state is looking at the spectrum of the tone of the tissue, right? So when we're looking at tissue tone, you have this spectrum where you have relaxed tissues over here and you have kind of overly tight tissues here. So overly tight, they're like this and like in a state of constriction or spasm. And then over here we have relaxed or kind of loose, apathetic, weak, flabby. The tissues basically have lost their structural integrity. They've lost their tone. And this, a hemorrhoid is basically what we're seeing is relaxation of the veins, of the venous side of circulation. And the thing about veins is that, you know, the veins are basically moving deoxygenated blood back to the heart. And in that way, they don't have the elasticity of an artery, right? Veins don't expand and contract like arteries do that actually helps to move the blood through the vessel. Veins are much more passive in that regard, which makes them significantly more prone to blood stagnation. Now what we see is that the veins have, and this is going to be a very crude drawing because I'm not very good at drawing, but if this was a vein, basically they have these little valves that allow the blood to move up, and then those valves can, when the blood is maybe not moving, it's trying to flow down, there's these valves that close that prevent the blood from backflowing through the vein. What happens with a relaxed vein is that the tone of the vein has become lost. If the valve is up here, it's kind of permeable, right? So the blood is able to flow back through the vein and pool in these little pockets, right? And so now the vein becomes swollen and filled with stagnant blood. Oftentimes it becomes inflamed, hence the heat, the burning, the irritation, and because it's filled with stagnant fluid, it's pressing against it, and it's leading to this sense of pressure and kind of heaviness. And in the case of a hemorrhoid, right, we're seeing the veins around the colon engorging with that blood and then becoming heavy and basically dropping out of the opening of the anus, right? So definitely not pleasant, and as we can see, this might be why it's considered a little embarrassing. I mean, I even feel a little awkward talking about it right now, right? So imagine having one and going to someone and being like, yeah, I got this thing and it kind of hurts, like I can't sit down very well, if you get my meaning, right? So this is what's happening here, is it's relaxation of the veins. And now one of the things that's very important to understand here, though, is that if we have relaxation of the veins down in the region of the colon, it's quite likely that we have relaxed veins elsewhere. And what we see with this specifically in regards to a hemorrhoid is it's specifically affecting the portal vein, or just portal circulation. Now what the portal vein is it's actually one of the largest veins in the body, and the portal vein connects the small intestine to the liver. So anytime your food is when food and nutrients are being absorbed from the intestinal wall, it's all going into the portal vein to be delivered to the liver, where it goes through further metabolism and for it to be shipped out to the rest of the body and used, right? So what ends up happening is that this whole portal circulation area oftentimes also becomes relaxed. And what happens there is that we can see a certain degree of liver stagnation. We can see difficulty in the liver to receive those nutrients properly from the intestinal tract, and we just see overall stagnation, basically. But it's stagnation because all the tissues have lost their tone. So this is a critically important thing to understand about a hemorrhoid, is that there's a deeper level of tissue state imbalance happening throughout the whole pelvic and even gastric region here that will not be addressed if a hemorrhoid is only treated topically, right? So this is why we need to have an internal approach to treating a hemorrhoid. Now, So this is all basically what is called the damp relaxation tissue state. And it's called damp relaxation because with a relaxed tissue, what we see is it changes the flow of fluids, right? So I like to think of, if you think of a river, right, the only way a river can flow properly is if the banks are solid and holding the water in place. If that riverbank starts to erode, the water starts to flow with less direction. And so this is kind of what's happening within the body. So in that way, damp relaxation, this tissue state can manifest in a couple different ways. One is that tissues are relaxed, that's allowing fluids to flow out of the body, right? So like with relaxed kidneys, we're going to see excess urination. With relaxed pores of the skin, we're going to see excess sweating. With a relaxed bowel, we oftentimes see diarrhea. Conversely, we can see relaxation occurring where the fluids aren't necessarily leaving the body, but they're flowing into inappropriate areas of the body. So hemorrhoids is the classic example there. A varicose vein is a classic example. And really, a varicose vein and a hemorrhoid are essentially the same thing, just in different parts of the body. Varicose veins are usually in the legs, the backs of the knees and such. A hemorrhoid is pretty much the exact same thing, just in that general area. Relaxed tissues can also manifest as like organ prolapse, where connective tissues become weak and relaxed, and the organs can then fall out of place. But I mention this because the understanding tissue states enables you to see the specific category of herbs that you want to use for treatment of that tissue state. And what we see here with relaxation is that it's universally treated with astringents. So astringents is that category of plants that will have a tightening, puckering, tonifying action upon a tissue. So it's like if you ever eat a banana that's too green and it kind of dries your mouth out and it tightens everything up, that's astringency. Or, if you're ever making yourself a cup of tea, a green tea or something, and you allow it to steep for too long and it gets that really kind of drying effect and tightening, puckering effect on your tissues, that is astringency. And that's really what we're going for here. So the tissue is loose like this, and the astringent is going to tighten it up and kind of stitch those tissues together, so to speak, to reestablish their tone. And so we use astringents strictly for the treatment of the damp relaxation tissue state. So this becomes a primary herbal action that we are looking for in a holistic treatment of hemorrhoids. Now, if we're thinking in terms of portal circulation, the liver, the portal vein, kind of digestion as a whole can sometimes be affected here too. One way that people can get a hemorrhoid actually is if they're constipated. And when they're having a bowel movement, they're straining, like they're pushing too hard. And if that vein is already relaxed and they're pushing that downward motion, they can actually push so hard that they push the vein out of that region, right? And so this is actually what happened with this particular client. They were a little constipated and pushed too hard, and then they could feel the vein falling out. So digestion can oftentimes be impaired. Liver can become a little bit stagnant, portal stagnation. And so from that perspective, bitters are oftentimes going to be a very supportive herbal action here for hemorrhoids to support the liver and digestion as a whole. The other major herbal action that we want to consider here is circulatory stimulant, because we're really seeing stagnant blood, right, in the vein. So we want to move that blood, we want to move that circulation, we kind of want to warm things up and just help to relieve that blood stagnation that's present there. And generally, carminatives could be beneficial here. I mean, carminatives are a type of circulatory stimulant specific for the gut. but carminatives generally help to just kind of warm and stimulate digestion as a whole as well. So these are really our main herbal actions that we want to look for. We're mainly oftentimes looking for a warming energetic property because we're seeing blood stagnation. Even though there is inflammation and kind of this hot, itching, burning pain commonly associated with hemorrhoids, that's usually what we might refer to as like a heat from cold effect, right? It's like there's stagnant blood, things aren't moving. It's generally considered a cold pattern because of that lack of stimulation. And then the vital force is responding by creating heat and inflammation to try to move that stagnant blood. So on the surface there appears to be heat, but underneath of that it's cold, and so we want a warming effect to move and disperse that blood. We generally want something that's going to be drying as well because we want to get those fluids moving, and then we want something that is tonic or astringent, again, in order to relieve that relaxed tissue. So, and then as far as herbal affinities, we really want things that are going to focus on the liver. We want things that are going to focus on the vasculature, ideally the veins. We want remedies that are going to focus on the intestines. So these are kind of, so this is the way that when I'm making a formula, so I'm doing this not just to show you a really great effective formula for treating hemorrhoids, but also to kind of give you a glimpse into my process for thinking through how to find the right remedy for a person. So as I think through the tissue state and the affinity and all that stuff, I start listing, okay, what are the main actions that I want my herbs to have? What are the energetics I want my herbs to have? And what are the affinities or parts of the body I want them to act on? So this is kind of the main constellation of dynamics that I'm looking for with my herbs. I'm going to leave those up here so I can kind of, well, no, I'm going to erase these and show you this formula. So here's the formula that I came up with. We have horse chestnut, and I'll describe kind of what each of these herbs are doing in the formula so you can get a sense for why I put it in there. Horse chestnut, red root, Oregon grape, yarrow, and ginger. And that's at 5%, 30%, 25, 20. So let me make sure I did my math right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay, so that's 100%. So this is the formula that I give. This was a tincture formula, and I compounded a 1 ounce bottle for this client. So the lead herb in this formula is horse chestnut. Now, horse chestnut's a really cool remedy because it pretty much hits everything we're shooting for in the treatment of a hemorrhoid. So on the one hand, horse chestnut is pungent, warming, and very astringent. And so what we see with horse chestnut is that it's a circulatory stimulant and it's an astringent, right? So it's moving the blood, but it's also tightening and tonifying relaxed tissues, especially in the cardiovascular system. This is why horse chestnut is also considered a primary remedy in the treatment of varicose veins. If you look at a lot of varicose vein formulas, a lot of them have horse chestnut in them. A lot of them also have witch hazel in them. It's very common for people to recommend doing witch hazel topically for the treatment of a hemorrhoid. That, you know, you can buy these little kind of like almost like baby wipe pads that are witch hazel. And this person was actually using the witch hazel pads and the preparation H for like a week, and the hemorrhoid was getting worse. While the preparation H and the witch hazel was kind of helping subside some of the pain and the discomfort, it wasn't actually making the hemorrhoid better, and it was actually getting bigger over the course of a week. So horse chestnut's our main herb there. This is supported by red root, which is also very astringent. Very astringent, and it has some bitterness to it, working through the liver, the lymph, and the spleen. And so red root basically is a very drying plant, and it's commonly used as an astringent to kind of tighten up the whole portal circulation. It's used to oftentimes for lymphatic congestion, swollen lymph nodes, clearing out infection from the body. While this isn't technically infection, I like red root because it's so astringent and bitter and really tones up that portal circulation quite nicely. And is very, very drying. I'm going to switch to the other side because I'm running out of room. Oregon grape is predominantly bitter. It has a much stronger liver affinity, but it also has a digestive affinity. So it is going to really help to stimulate digestion, move liver stagnation, stimulate digestive secretions to support any, if there is any constipation going on. We just want to make sure that when this person, when someone has a hemorrhoid and they're having a bowel movement, you want to make sure it's just moving really easily. It's going to become worse if they're having to push really hard. So the digestive support is really nice with Oregon grape. And the other thing about Oregon grape is that it is astringent. Not a lot of people consider Oregon grape to be astringent, because certainly the bitterness is a much stronger attribute of Oregon grape than its astringency, but it is astringent for sure. This is why it works so well for treating things like infectious diarrhea. But the Oregon grape is going to be really nice just by moving all of that liver stagnation, and it is going to tone things up a little bit more. Now, yarrow is in here. And boy, yarrow is a really complex plant. We could probably talk about yarrow for like 3 hours and still not say everything that it's all about. But what's cool about yarrow is that it is definitely a circulatory stimulant that's specific for the veins, right? So yarrow specifically stimulates venous circulation. And as we've noted, there's blood stagnation in a vein with a hemorrhoid. So this becomes, in my opinion, a very specific remedy, very, very indicated. Not only is it stimulating the flow of blood, but it's also very bitter and is going to support digestion, and it's going to support the liver. It also modulates inflammation, which there is some inflammation here with the varicose vein. This can be supportive. It's not, to me, a primary thing we're really going for, because it's not, just stopping inflammation isn't getting to the root cause, but it does modulate inflammation and can alleviate some of that discomfort. And yarrow is also very astringent, right? So we're seeing a theme here. We're pretty much giving an astringent formula, but just these three alone were, the horse chestnut's moving blood, but I wanted to add something that's really specifically blood moving and just very specific for the blood. I mean, I was taught that yarrow is, quote, master of the blood. So anytime there's stuff going on with blood, yarrow can really be a pretty good option there, because it's a very complex remedy. There's a lot going on with that plant. So that's where yarrow's at. And ginger, very simply, we're getting a stronger circulatory stimulant here that's just very pungent. We're also getting some carminative support. We have bitterness and carminative with yarrow, because yarrow has some essential oils in it along with bitterness, so it's bitter and carminative. Ginger is just straight carminative. Ginger's going to help, again, increase blood flow in the whole digestive region. It's going to help to relax any constriction or tension, move blood, and just overall, just really move the blood. That's pretty much what we're going for here. Also, it's going to make the formula taste a little bit better. Overall, this is a pretty darn bitter formula. So the ginger's kind of nice. It's going to balance the energetics a little bit and make it taste a little bit better. So that is the formula that I administered to this client. I had them taking 1 dropper full 5 times a day for 3 days, and then drop down to 3 times a day afterwards. And what was pretty amazing is that after 3 days, after 2 days, that hemorrhoid really started to reduce. They described it as, it almost started to seem like it was deflating, which is good. It means that the blood is moving out of that vein. And over a period of 5 days, the hemorrhoid totally disappeared. After 5 days of using this formula, that hemorrhoid disappeared. So this shows that, I think there's a couple dynamics here that are important to acknowledge. That sometimes to me, it's really important to look at, even if there's something superficial going on the body, on the surface of the body, to not overlook that there might be a deeper internal cause to that problem. And I think a hemorrhoid is a really great example here, that just putting a cream on that hemorrhoid, even if it was an herbal cream of witch hazel and horse chestnut and other things, that's not going to treat the deeper level of relaxation and stagnation happening in the liver and portal circulation, in the digestive system, etc. So this really shows how internal treatment is really important, even for what seem like things on the surface of the body. It also shows the importance of tissue states, right? And kind of the process of thinking through what are the most appropriate herbs to use. Like, if you noticed, I didn't immediately say, here's all these herbs that are good for hemorrhoids, right? And it's like, you can do that, but, as an herbalist, it's important to not just know what herbs are good for conditions, but to really understand why. Right? Why is horse chestnut so great for a hemorrhoid, right? What makes yarrow applicable here for a hemorrhoid? Like, you're probably not going to read a monograph on yarrow and see very often that it's an herb for hemorrhoids, right? But it's very effective, especially when I break it down this way, to show how all of yarrow's properties do support in a holistic therapeutic strategy for treating a hemorrhoid. So that process of thinking through the condition and then the underlying tissue state pathological pattern, and then translating that into your herbal actions, your affinities, and your energetics, listing all of that out, and then being able to build your formula from that. And what that does is that now, you can check the global action of that formula against that list of actions, energetics, and affinities that you need to treat this person, and make sure that you're really encompassing everything that you need to treat that person. So that's just a little formula that I used. Wanted to share a little success story with you here for treating a slightly embarrassing condition. I truly hope that you yourself never have to use a formula of this nature. But if you do yourself or for another client, this could be a potentially beneficial approach. Again, and I usually don't take that approach of, use this formula for hemorrhoids, because oftentimes certain diseases or pathologies or symptoms have different underlying tissue states. But in the case of a hemorrhoid, we're really talking about that relaxation tissue state, which we're pretty much universally going to use astringents to treat that. So I hope you learned something good from this video here. If you're watching this anywhere but our website, head on over to evolutionaryherbalism.com. We've got tons of free training and videos on our blog and more in-depth mini courses there for you. So be sure to check that out over at evolutionaryherbalism.com. Scroll down below, leave me a comment. Always love the feedback. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Share it. Give us a like. We always love to see those likes and shares, and just spreading the incredible, beautiful knowledge and healing power of the plants. If you are not already subscribed to our podcast, head on over to The Plant Path. You can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and get all of our most recent content there on the podcast. So thanks so much for tuning in to this most recent issue here on the Evolutionary Herbalism blog. I truly hope it serves you well. And until next time, take care and be well.